Hello, and welcome to Roggen's Emporium of Fear. Try to watch this in the dark, if you can. This Halloween, we have a terrifying special episode for you, featuring two stories that will give you nightmares for 50 years. The first SPINE-TINGLING story delves deep into the consequences of one unfortunate trick-or-treater's greed, and the second reveals the truth behind a seemingly innocent Halloween celebration. So turn off the lights, grab a can of Roggen's delicious canned spaghetti, and prepare to have your timbers shivered.
Hello, I have a terrifying story to tell. My name will not be revealed, as I fear what would happen if I was found by the Roggen. I've always enjoyed trick-or-treating, ever since I was a child. The air feels truly magical when you don a mask and stalk the night, and the thrill of having your own bag of candy was unrivaled as a child. Even now, as a grown man, I still walk around after the trick-or-treaters have returned home for the night so that I can see all the decorations and take leftover candy, being the fattest I am. It also gives me a way to get candy, which I cannot afford due to being a jobless NEET. One of these days, I'm sure my career as a canned spaghetti reviewer YouTube channel will take off, but in the meantime, I gotta do what I gotta do. So, where it began. Halloween, last year. I was dressed up as my favorite gnome, Keemstar, and preparing to leave my house at midnight after a long night of filming Roggen's delicious canned spaghetti taste tests. I had managed to find almost every limited edition Halloween flavor. I had the candy corn, brains, pumpkin pie, and spider flavors, but frustratingly, couldn't find the ultra-rare limited edition blood flavor. I figured that if I could find this last flavor to review, I'd finally hit it big and would be able to finally make a living off of my YouTube channel, and I wouldn't have to keep selling my organs to keep the lights on. I decided I'd walk to the convenience store a few miles down the road to see if they had any in a last-ditch attempt before the Halloween season ended for good. My shitty car, which I had loaned to my friend, was totaled after he ran over a herd of deer at 120 miles per hour, and I didn't have the money to fix it. It was pitch black and silent outside. There wasn't even the sound of the wind, and the air was still. A low, icy fog hung in the frigid air. The chill of the air made my breath catch in my lungs, and the sudden shock sent my remaining half of a lung into a coughing fit. The fit was strong enough that I keeled over slightly, and when I stood back up, I nearly had a heart attack. Standing in my lawn, just 10 feet or so in front of me, there was a strange figure watching me. It was just a pitch black silhouette, but there was something weird about how it looked. It looked ultra-realistic, as if it was more realistic than reality itself. It was about 4 feet tall, like me, but it had long, skinny limbs and a tall crest atop its spherical body. I felt an eye, somewhere in the center of its body, glaring at me. I stared at it, mouth slightly agape, and frozen in fear for a few seconds. I didn't even want to breathe, but I knew that this creature had already seen me. It felt like forever, but a cloud of thick fog soon drifted in front of the creature, obscuring it completely. Once the fog passed, the creature was gone. I thought this was strange, but assumed it was a local hooligan playing some prank on me. I thought back to all the pranks I pulled as a child on Halloween, throwing eggs at houses, stealing entire bowls of candy, throwing cinder blocks at moving cars, destroying pumpkins, all things everyone has done at least once. I chuckled at my situation, more an attempt at reassuring myself than the result of any sense of humor. I still felt the burning gaze of that figure, but did my best to ignore it. I made sure my door was locked and continued down the road. As time went on, the night only got colder, and the only light I could see was the orangish glow of the full moon hanging above me. All this walking was starting to make me hungry, and I began to surreptitiously glance at the doorsteps of the houses I passed, hoping to find a bowl of candy still left out. Time after time, I passed empty bowls and trays, hastily scrawled take one notes presumably ignored, cast aside in the mad scramble to get as many pieces as possible before anyone noticed, but more importantly, before another opportunist could raid all the unsupervised bowls before you could. A chill went down my spine as quaint neighborhoods began to grow fade, and houses grew sparse, giving way to overgrown fields and scraggly woods, branches of bare trees clawing at the sky. I saw an all too familiar shape looming in the distance. The local abandoned Roggen's Italian restaurant. As a child, I was always told to avoid the derelict old shack. My friends and I always dared each other to go inside, especially on Halloween, but none of us were ever brave enough to go inside. Even the local tweakers were scared of it, those who went inside to try to strip the copper wire from the walls for scrap or use it as temporary shelter, were never seen again. The police, it was rumored, actively covered up all the strange occurrences of the location and impeded efforts to demolish the building. The local urban legends told of demolition crews disappearing in the night, replaced only by splotches of Roggen's canned spaghetti sauce, pieces of equipment found impossibly missing all of their copper wire, and terrible workplace accidents, leading to horrifying deaths. When I passed the winding driveway leading up the hill to the accursed building, I noticed something strange. Written in a dripping red liquid, a message on a wooden board at the intersection of the driveway and the road said the following: Roggen's delicious canned spaghetti limited edition Halloween flavors for sale, and an arrow written in the same substance pointing up the driveway. There was an unbearable coppery smell around the sign. It seemed odd to me that someone would write a sign using tomato soup, but I took the coppery smell as evidence that someone had finally managed to steal the coveted copper wire from the building. Foolishly, I believed that, if this were the case, it must mean that the rumors and legends were just that. Rumors and legends, and the building must be safe. How wrong I was. Filled with a sense of bravado, I marched up the driveway, ignoring the distant yips and cries of some distant unknown animal, hoping that whoever was giving out the canned spaghetti would have the coveted blood flavor. A ray of moonlight illuminated something sitting in front of the door. As I got closer, I saw what it was. A large orange plastic bowl with a small jack-o'-lantern face printed in black on the front. A piece of paper taped to the rickety wooden chair it sat on held a hastily scrawled message. Please take one. I couldn't believe my luck when I saw what was inside. Cans of Roggen's delicious canned spaghetti, blood limited edition Halloween flavor. I took off my pointed gnome hat and used it as a makeshift bag, taking every single can from the bowl. I was giddy, thinking my luck had finally changed. I'd finally make it big, I would be able to live comfortably, maybe even luxuriously. I'd be able to buy back the organs I had sold for money, buy a nice house, a new car, and I could travel the world. I always wanted to visit the Roggen's spaghetti cannery in the bustling metropolis of Roggen, Colorado, and now my lifelong dream could come true. As I was looking around, making sure no one had seen me, something in the Roggen's caught my attention, and I felt my heart sink. I almost didn't see it, already lost in the clouds, daydreaming of what my new life would be. It was the same silhouette I saw outside my house was now standing in the abandoned restaurant, right by a cracked and grimy window, watching me. This time, it was barely lit up by the moonlight, giving me a glimpse of its mustard yellow crest, indigo body, and large singular eye watching me from the center of its spherical body. I fell backwards, turning and sprinting away as fast as I could run, about 2 miles per hour. Within what felt like no time at all, I was back in my house, panting, trying to catch my breath, back up against my locked door. I checked my hat, and sure enough, all the cans were still there. I breathed a sigh of relief. I decided to record the taste test and review tonight, after which I'd pack my few belongings in a rented truck and escape this hellhole before that thing found me. Frustratingly, none of my video or audio equipment would turn on. My annoyance turned to panic, however, when I opened up my camera, only to find every single copper wire and component was gone, perfectly stripped from its insides. It was almost masterful, and I would have stopped to admire such skillful copper wire removal were I not terrified to my core. My heart sank when my power suddenly went out, leaving me in the pitch black. I instinctively knew that there was no copper wire left in my walls now, and I was helpless in the dark. As I heard someone or something walking up the stairs to my studio, I picked up one of the cans to use as a makeshift weapon. It wasn't much, but if thrown, it might be heavy enough to momentarily distract this thing. The footsteps reached the top of the stairs, and after a moment, I heard a deep, raspy voice from the hallway say to me,
"You only should have taken one."
I hurled the can into the dark hallway. It must have hit the thing, because I heard a loud thud, and I had enough time to dive out my window and run away, deep into the woods. I write this on a stranger's computer after sneaking into a random Halloween party. I hope that being in a crowd will protect me, but only time will tell. I don't know why, but I feel the strong urge to return to the abandoned Roggenos. I know how foolish this would be, but I can't control it. I can't stop thinking about how I left all those cans behind at my house. Maybe there's more? Maybe I can still make that video and escape this town. Regardless, one thing holds true. Roggenos' delicious canned spaghetti is all I have left, all that gives my life meaning. Without it, I am nothing. I must return to the Roggenos, even if it costs me my life. I was so close, so tantalizingly close to tasting the last flavor I'd need to have tried them all. Take my story as a warning. If you see a bowl of canned spaghetti on Halloween, never take any. Farewell.
Green Goblin.
Oh my God! No!
Hello, I have a horrifying story to tell. There's no reason for me to reveal my identity, as I will be long dead by the time you read this. Take this as a warning. Never go to candlelight Halloween. My story started around a week ago, when I was at the unemployment office waiting to collect my unemployment check. I had been out of a job for nearly a year by this point, after being fired from the local food bank when they caught me stealing Roggenos canned spaghetti for the third time. While waiting, I noticed that there was a poster on the wall advertising Candlelight Halloween 2017. I decided to take a closer look. The poster said that there would be snacks, fun games, a tour, and even an opportunity to help create a new Halloween-themed Roggenos delicious canned spaghetti flavor. Surprisingly, the event was taking place only a few miles away from Roggen, Colorado, the city I lived in. I was ecstatic. It would be an understatement to merely call me a fan of candlelight. Ever since birth, I was fed a strict diet of Roggenos Italian, and I read almost nothing but candlelight comics. I was always on the lookout for new products, having set up a botnet to scrape the internet 24/7 for any leaks on new releases. Candlelight Halloween was more of a marketing ploy than a true celebration, but it was one of the few times new candlelight products were released, so I knew I had to go. On Halloween day, I begged my mom, with whom I still lived, to let me use her car so I could drive to the event. She happily obliged, always looking for opportunities to get away from me. It didn't take long to get out of the bustling city and into the darkness of the night. I took my time, as the pothole-ridden road twisted and turned without notice. The headlights flickered on and off frequently, only shining light a few feet forward when they decided to work. For once, I didn't have to listen to a non-stop cacophony of police sirens and gunshots. Along the way, I saw something out of the ordinary. It was a large wooden billboard with some writing on it. I pulled over so I could get a better look at it. Written on the billboard in some sort of red liquid was a warning. Turn back now. I briefly glanced behind me, but I saw nothing. I assumed it was nothing more than a shitty prank before continuing towards the event. I was surprised to see no other cars upon my arrival at the factory. I had only arrived a few minutes before the first tour started, so I expected to have some trouble finding parking. I decided to park in a handicap spot because it was close to the entrance, and I didn't want to force my fat ass to walk any further than I needed to. I got out of my car and looked upward towards the factory. It was massive. It was hard to make out most of the details, as only a few lights worked. It found it somewhat strange how quiet it was, considering the factory's colossal size, but I decided that it was best not to think too hard about something so trivial. I followed the path of tacky Halloween decorations to the dimly lit front entrance. On both sides of the entrance were what I assume were once jack-o'-lanterns, but they had rotted so much that they were nothing more than piles of orange matter on the ground. I entered the factory and was once again surprised by its size. The actual event felt microscopic compared to the cavernous room it occupied. There was a small table with a dirty candlelight-themed tablecloth covering it. On the table were various refreshments, such as the fabled limited edition Halloween flavors. Next to the table was an old arcade machine that had my favorite game Roggen Creepypasta on it. I used to visit the arcade all the time as a child just to play it. However, it was discontinued after only a few months, as I'm pretty sure I was the only person who played it. The only other thing I noticed in the room wasn't related to the event, at least I think. In one of the corners, there was a massive growth of mold, fungus, and only God knows what else. A sign had been erected a few feet into the tumorous growth that read, "Do not touch for use in Roggen's delicious mushroom stew." While waiting for the tour, I decided to start by playing Roggen Quest. I inserted a quarter into the arcade machine, but nothing happened. I remembered you had to pay a small weekly subscription fee of $30 to play. The coin slot had been left in place only to scam unsuspecting arcade goers. Thankfully, Candlelight had been kind enough to not cancel mine all these years later, so I was able to log in and play. The game was as terrible as I remembered it being when I played it as a child. You played as a sliding JPEG of a Roggen that had to platform through empty black and white levels, with lava occasionally sloppily pasted in random spots. The controls were terrible, feeling sticky and unresponsive. I constantly jittered back and forth, clipping through objects and the climbable walls. Instead of fixing the numerous bugs in the game, Candlelight opted to brand them as features to cut development costs. The music was just as awful as the gameplay. All of the tracks were short, 6 to 7 second chiptune loops that sounded like they were stitched together by a high schooler on a free music making website. I tried to beat the game, but I ended up getting stuck on one of the levels. The developers had placed tiny, barely visible dots of lava all over the map that gave absolutely no room for error. After losing all of my lives, I punched the machine in a fit of rage, sending sparks and glass flying everywhere. The room was unnervingly quiet now that the arcade machine had stopped blasting its shitty chiptunes. I suddenly heard something terrifying that I'll never forget. A low, rumbling sound echoed across the room. With horror, I realized I had not eaten anything for nearly 40 minutes. I decided to quell my hunger over at the refreshments table. I moved from left to right, selfishly helping myself to all of the snacks. To the far left of the table was a large plastic bowl filled with some sort of red liquid. The liquid was hyper-realistic, as if it were more realistic than reality itself. A single cracked plastic cup had been left out, I guess for all of the guests to share. I assumed it was fruit punch or something and took a swig of it. Instantly, my body forced the drink back up. The pungent fatty taste of copper made me feel nauseous. Clearly the drink was expired or something. In the middle of the table was a rusty tray filled with complimentary deodorant, which I skipped. To the far right of the table were the coveted limited edition Halloween flavors. All of them were already opened, and a used spoon sat on top of a dirty napkin. By this point, my hunger had reached its peak. I began shoveling the contents of each can into my mouth, now careless as to what the flavors were. Strangely, my hunger only seemed to grow with each consecutive mouthful. I went to scoff down the fifth and final can, but that's when I noticed something was off. The event had stated there would be 5 flavors, but there were only 4 cans on the table. I took a step back, revealing a piece of paper my rotten stomach had been covering. It was sitting on the table where the last flavor should have been. I got closer, and that's when I realized it was a volunteer form for the chance to help create the new Halloween Roggen's delicious canned spaghetti flavor. The paper was densely packed with a bunch of legal nonsense, with the font size gradually decreasing the further down I looked. I didn't bother reading any of it, instead opting to skip to the end where I filled in all the usual stuff, like my signature, date of birth, home address, credit card details, social security number, etc. Right as I finished smearing the remainder of the cans on the paper, I heard some shuffling behind me, followed by a deep, raspy voice saying,
"Welcome to Candlelight Halloween 2017. It is now time for the factory tour. I will be your guide. Please hand in your volunteer forms now."
I turned around and was horrified by what I saw. Standing before me was a creature of some sort. It was incredibly short, just like my good friend Isaac William Phoenix. It had long, mustard-colored arms and legs. Its rich indigo body was spherical, and in the center of it was a large, bloodshot eye. A pointy yellow crest extended from the top. I realized with horror that the creature was a Roggen. I turned to run, but stopped myself when I saw that there were now 2 Roggens standing by the exit. They were armed with automatic spaghetti launchers and Roggen's delicious canned hand grenades, giving me no choice but to obey the tour guide Roggen. I was forced to follow the guide Roggen to an old elevator, where I was shoved in by the 2 armed Roggens. Shortly thereafter, the elevator began descending. The elevator screamed and moaned as it went down. Whether this was caused by its state of disrepair or my weight, I cannot say. A few minutes later, the elevator screeched to a halt. I have no idea how far down it took me, as the tally stopped counting after reaching floor -99. From the elevator, I was taken into what appeared to be a large storage room. Visibility was somewhat poor. A few aged light bulbs were the only source of illumination. The bulbs flickered and glowed with a warm orange light that almost made me forget where I was. In the room were rolls upon rolls of copper wiring that filled every part of the room, with a small path remaining directly through the middle. I continued down this path with the Roggen into the next room. It was incredibly long and tall. Through the middle of the room was a narrow, grated bridge suspended by rusty chain links. Beneath me was something I'll never forget. It was a river. A river of Roggen delicious spaghetti sauce. Towards the end of the river was a water turbine, presumably powered by the turbulent flow of red sauce. Spaghetti production was a self-sustaining cycle, each batch begetting the next. The sound of the rushing liquid made me sick, reminding me of the old shower my abusive parents forced me to use. I leaned over the railing and hurled directly into the stream below. Surprisingly, the Roggen didn't seem to care whatsoever. I followed the Roggen across the bridge into the final room. It appeared to be a medical ward. All the equipment was rusted over, and the beds were covered in a sticky red substance. The Roggen turned to me before saying,
"This concludes the Roggen Italian factory tour. Thank you for volunteering to help create the new Roggen delicious canned spaghetti flavor. Good."
Before I even realized what was happening, I heard shuffling behind me, followed by the sharp pain of a catleprod being shoved into my side. Everything went dark. When I woke, I felt pain all over my body. I tried to move, but couldn't, as the Roggen had tied me to a medical recliner. I looked to my right and was horrified by what I saw. 8 KFC drink bucket bags had been connected to each other, some of them filled with a red substance that I soon realized was my own blood. To my left was a massive 10-foot-tall can of Roggen delicious canned spaghetti sauce. A transfusion pipe was running from it into my arm. It was then I realized what was happening. The Roggen was harvesting my blood for the new Halloween flavor and was replacing the lost blood with Roggen delicious spaghetti sauce. I am currently writing this on the back of a blood-flavored can of Roggen delicious canned spaghetti as a warning. I know I don't have much time left, nearly all of my blood is gone. If you are reading this, don't eat the blood-flavored Roggen spaghetti, but more importantly, never go to candlelight Halloween. Farewell.